signal for it to get.
Yeah. Bonjour à tous, mon nom est Sam Ayoub, je suis le président fondateur de la Canada-Europe Economic Chamber, ici à Bruxelles. Le sommet se fera essentiellement en anglais afin de pouvoir rejoindre un maximum de personnes à travers le monde et pour parler la langue couramment utilisée ici à Bruxelles. Hello everyone, my name is Sam Ayoub. I am the president and founder of the Canada-Europe Economic Chamber here in Brussels. Our mission is to assist and help Canadian companies to grow their business in Europe and to assist and to help European companies to expand internationally from Canada and in Canada. We are providing business development services, trade missions, market studies. Please go on our website for more details at canadaeurope.eu. As we are a business platform for Canadians and Europeans so that they can meet and develop their business, we are organizing conferences, seminars, and a one-per-year EU-Canada Business Summit here in Brussels. This year may be different, as we've all been strongly impacted by the COVID-19 crisis, and our business development may have suffered greatly and put on hold for a while. In that regard, we've managed to change the date of the summit that was originally scheduled in May, and then we had to change the venue, and now we are in a complete virtual and free version of the summit. Virtual is not like meeting face-to-face or to be able to give a real handshake, I give you that, but it is helping every one of us moving forward and to think of the future now. Moving forward, that is what we all need. That is what we should all think of. As you know, running a business is all about adapting yourself to new realities, whether it is coming from an economic, a sanitary, or a political standpoint. Now, we all face the same challenge at the same time. But if we may not be at the beginning of the end, we are definitely at the end of the beginning of this crisis. So I invite you to be proactive, to think of Canada as your friend, as it is probably the most European country outside of Europe. And I promise you that next year, we will all be together in the same room, safe and sound. So in today's summit, we will address many interesting topics with high-level speakers coming from all over Europe and Canada, from the private sector, as well as from the governments. We will also have guest panel talking about the collaboration that could take place between Africa, Europe, and Canada. Don't miss it, I think that would be very interesting. That's in the morning, 10:30, I believe. So we have a total of 9 panels. So a lot of panelists. The summit is a one-day summit. You can pick the panels that you're interested in. I'm going to describe some of the panels, well, all of them actually. So the first one at 9 a.m., the panel is Energy and Environment, and we have the chance and the honor to have one of our conference speakers, ex-Prime Minister of Quebec, Philippe Couillard, now working for Dentons in Montreal, so he will be part of the panel. And now with the Green Deal, the President of European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, surprised every environmentalist that when she announced she would make climate policy the hallmark of her 5-year mandate. So we're going to talk about that. Climate change is an existential issue for Europe. So how Canada and Europe can cooperate in order to deliver this Green Deal. Panel number 2 would be Security and Transport. So how to implement Horizon 2020, meaning protect and improve the resilience of critical infrastructures, supply chains and transport modes, strengthen security through border management, improve cybersecurity. Third panel would be manufacturers, including, and I'm very glad to have Patrolock on board in that panel of Canada Goose, talking specifically about how manufacturing their product is a part of their business plan. So I'm looking forward to hear about that. We will ask some questions like, do customers in Europe and Canada care where goods are produced? And what does it take to create a sustainable global business? Fourth panel will be international trade and mobility. The main goal of international trade policy is to increase trading opportunities for companies by removing trade barriers such as tariffs and quotas, and by guaranteeing fair competition. It is essential for the trade partners' economy as it affects growth and employment. Therefore, trade agreements should also facilitate mobility of professionals and managers. Obviously, we're going to talk about CETA into that panel, into a side panel, which we call session in the afternoon. Fifth panel will be artificial intelligence, so AI. while politics provides the framework conditions for research, financing, education, data, promotion, and regulation, in the midterm, AI must be developed by companies and brought into the market. So our national interests can be taken into account, artificial intelligence, reduce costs, and maximize profits. Sixth, and not the least, financial services. We're going to talk about what can we expect in terms of CETA's impact on the financial services sectors in both Canada and the European Union, and what does provision found in CETA's financial services chapter mean in practice. Also, we are going to talk about philanthropy and fundraising platforms, e-platforms, electronic platforms. Into the side panels that we're calling now sessions as an online event. It's going to be, as I talked earlier, unlocking business opportunity for EU-Canada collaboration in Africa, so very interesting. And a very important panel, obviously, is Invest in Canada. The panel will discuss Canada's openness to investors and place for doing business, including during the pandemic and recovery, to discuss recent changes to Canada's trade and investment framework, and to hear about the experience of investing in Canada directly from investors. So don't miss that. I think that's the most relevant panel in today's summit. Opportunities, that's the ninth panel, opportunities at the interface of life sciences, nano and cognitive technologies, presented by Flanders Investment and Trade. That would be at the end of this afternoon. I will have the pleasure to receive Pat Sherlock again, but as an interviewer this time. We will have an hour to talk about the success story beyond Canada Goose and Europe. There's a link between Europe and Canada Goose success story. So we're going to talk about that and the history, of course, of Canada Goose in general. Looking forward to that. So before going ahead with the summit, I just want to thank all of our elite partners, starting with the Government of Canada, Government of Quebec, Dentons with Xavier van Anvermer. He's going to launch in the days to come a book in English and in French about CETA. So you'll hear about that a little more on today and in the days to come. Cible Solutions from Sherbrooke, directly from Canada. Hanover Communication, now a Canadian company here in Brussels, and Morrison Chapman. Plus every other partners in Canada and Europe that we are very fortunate to have and to work with. I would also like to thank our three moderators of today. They have done a fantastic job of helping me prepare the panels and conference speakers. So thank you, Eline Chivot of Center for Data Innovation in Brussels, Melina Howard of Lexfield in Luxembourg, from Luxembourg, and Annie Mutamba of Brussels Africa Hub here in Brussels again. Now a bit technical info for you to have for the day to come. So along the day, I invite you to experience our virtual summit by attending the panels that you are interested in. You don't have to log in for all the panels. Well, you can, but I would be glad, but you're more than welcome. But you can pick and choose or go from a panel to another. So there are 9 panels in total addressing several topics. To ask questions via the chat window at the very right of your screen. And to initiate yourself to our network rooms, there's going to be kind of 3 networking rooms at the very left of your screen as well. And you have the program. I encourage you to download the program into from our website, canadaeurope.eu. So you will be paired with the network rooms. You will be automatically paired with other participants for you to meet. So I wish you a very nice EU-Canada Business Summit 2020. And now let me introduce you, and please stay with me, to welcome Canadian Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion and International Trade, Marianne G, to officially open the EU-Canada Business Summit 2020.
Hello, everyone. Bonjour à toutes et tous. Thank you, Sam, for inviting me to share a few words today, and congratulations on this event. It is wonderful to see such a great variety of businesses and industry working together. The Canada-Europe Economic Chamber in the EU has helped businesses on both sides of the Atlantic access the opportunities they need to not only survive these challenging times, but to thrive in the future as well. The last few months have not been easy for our business owners and entrepreneurs, especially for those who export. Global supply chains are under significant pressure, and we've seen that over-reliance on a single supplier or customer is a critical risk for our businesses and for our economy. Canada is a trading nation, and diversification has to be a part of our solution to helping businesses rebuild and to grow. That is why free trade agreements such as CETA, or the Canada-European Union Comprehensive and Economic Trade Agreement, are so vital to our trade and our diversification strategy. Canada and Europe has a special relationship, rooted in our strong economic partnership and deepened by our people-to-people ties. The EU is Canada's second largest trading partner. Nearly $165 billion in goods and services flowed between us just last year. Last year, Canada imported more than $92 billion in European goods and services, while 8.4% of Canada's global goods exports and 16.5% of our global services exports went to the EU. Since CETA came into effect, Canada-EU merchandise trade has increased annually by over 21%, which is certainly something to celebrate. This preferential market access has helped Quebec-based companies like Hexoskin make high-tech smart shirts with Italian fabric, enhanced with health sensors that allow hospitals to monitor patients at home safely. It has also helped German-based businesses Reclay Group grow, a company that helps governments and businesses around the world with safe disposal of packaging and waste. With CETA, they're hoping to win contracts here in Canada and to help businesses go green and lower their greenhouse gas emissions. These are just a couple of examples of many more of businesses doing business between the EU and Canada. The EU member states are also currently Canada's second largest source of foreign direct investment. Canada prides itself on being one of the best and safest countries in the world in which to invest and to do business. And this investment into Canada benefits both Europeans and Canadians alike. CETA entered into force 2 years ago with specific investment provisions to offer stability. And now European investment in Canada represent more than 25% of the direct investment in Canada. This economic partnership will continue to play a key role in providing opportunities and stability for our businesses, especially on the road to economic recovery from COVID-19. As Canada and the EU take action to rebuild our economies and support people across our countries, we know that trade and the opportunities it creates will be crucial. To the many government representatives here, let us continue doing everything we can to support businesses and to create the right environment for them to grow. To our resilient and innovative business owners and entrepreneurs, I encourage you to continue harnessing these opportunities and customers available to you in the European and Canadian markets, thanks to preferential access with CETA. I know that our government will continue to be there for you every step of the way. Thank you. Merci.
So here we are. So thank you, Mary, and we're looking forward. So just a quick reminder, as for the panels, we have at 9, energy environment. At 10:30, there's security and transport. At the same time, the side panel is the African panels, EU-Canada collaboration with Africa. And at 11:30, it is manufacturers. At 2 o'clock in this afternoon, international trade and mobility. At 3, AI, artificial intelligence, and financial services at 4. And last but not least, at 5, the on-stage interview. So I wish you a very, very good day. And don't forget to experience the networking session at your left of the screen. And now I pass along the to Eline, who will moderate the first panel, Energy and Environment. Eline.
Hi, Sam. Thank you very much. Good morning and welcome to this first panel of the EU-Canada Business Summit 2020. My name is Eline Chivot. I'm a policy analyst at the Center for Data Innovation. We're a think tank based in Brussels and DC. And I cover EU tech policy in Brussels. And it's a great pleasure today to be able to moderate a few of today's high-level panels. And I'd like to thank the Canada-Europe Economic Chamber and you, Sam, and your team for having me. To our audience online, thank you for joining. There are many of you today, which is proof that, if needed be, that there's a lot of attention being paid to the relations between Canada and the European Union and Europe as a whole. Please feel free to engage on social media. You can use the handle at CE Canada Europe. And as during our talks, we'll allow some time for questions and answers with you and our discussants. Do write your questions in the Q&A section of this platform. Our first topic of the day, as Sam mentioned, will be energy and environment. So I'd like to set the scene first before we welcome our panelists. So with the Green Deal, the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, surprised environmentalists when announcing ambitions to make climate policy the hallmark of her 5-year mandate. And the plans are ambitious. The EU seeks to have a 20% share of its gross final energy consumption from renewable sources by this year. And the Commission is proposing to increase the 2030 target for emission reduction from 40 to at least 55%. And the EU aims to be a climate neutral continent by 2050. Now, the EU wants to be a trailblazer in global climate policy, but just like for many other challenges that are global, and given the interconnections and interdependencies between economic regions and production value chains, achieving these targets will require cooperation through the joint promotion of emission reduction and common actions to reduce energy dependence. And some are cautioning against the challenge of combining the goals of climate protection, open trade and competitiveness, and challenges related to the energy mix. Meanwhile, on the other side, in a speech that was on last week, I believe, setting out the legislative agenda, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau really committed to bold new solutions to build Canada back better, with an eye on reducing carbon emissions. And there's really a will to follow or connect with Europe in investing economic stimulus in the long term and green projects. Now, we do have distinguished guests here who can certainly speak from Canada and Quebec's perspective and the EU's perspective, and to tell us more about how Europe and Canada can be, significant players and partners in this context. How important is it to promote the use of renewable energy sources and the reduction of energy dependence and meeting targets to combat global warming? How can Canada and Europe cooperate in order to deliver the Green Deal? What is the role of industry, and how are companies already deploying actions on both sides of the Atlantic? So with us to discuss this, we will welcome 3 distinguished speakers, which I do not see in the screen now, but I believe that they will be soon with us. So first we will have l'honorable Philippe Couillard, conseiller principal affaires, a senior business advisor at the multinational law firm Dentons. And hi everyone. I'm introducing you as well. So I hope you can see me. Then we'll have Nicolas, Vice President and General Manager of Boralex and President of Conseil and Eline, FFE, from France, joining us from Paris. And then we'll have Cooreman, who's head of facility and international trade at Hanover, which is a public corporate consultancy firm based in Brussels, in Belgium. So thank you everyone for joining. I think we're still waiting for Philippe Couillard to join us, but that will just be a matter of a few seconds. So let's discuss around the context that I've just described. So really, I've set the scene. These are ambitious policies and goals that we're seeing for energy and environment. Are these the right ones in each of you's views? So starting with you, Barbara, perhaps I'm wondering about your take from your perspective about the vision and the approach that we should have towards energy and environment, considering the current situation. I mean, the aftermath of COVID-19, the road to economic recovery, and this need to regenerate global competition moving forwards. To what extent are these goals within the reach of, perhaps from the European perspective in your case?
Yeah, thank you, Eline. And maybe before I answer that question, thanks to Sam and the Canada EU Economic Chamber for this for the opportunity to speak here and to engage with all of you. Well, I think indeed the energy transition or the path towards decarbonization is a challenging one, and I absolutely think it's great that the EU is putting these ambitions, and not only the EU but others as well, like Canada, but that these ambitions are there. We need to. I mean, we don't have another choice. I think on the approach taken, I mean, it's very challenging, and I think there's three main challenges. Let's say, on the one hand, you have, of course, this whole climate urgency, necessity, and the fact that we have the ambitions. But you need to put this versus the economic and the social impact, which was already an issue, as we've seen with the Gilets jaunes, as from 2018. But I think COVID has worsened this. You have this long-term climate need, this global climate need, but versus the sort of very immediate direct impact of social consequences, the sort of local need to find solutions, jobs. You have those, who worry about the end of the world versus those who worry about the end of the month. And I think this is a crucial element that needs to be part of any solution, because who will bear the costs? I mean, this will be very costly and there will be winners and losers. And I think, well, governments need to be more open about this, the real impact. Secondly, there's still a lot of uncertainty, discussions, maybe also some contradictions on how we are going to do this. Which energy sources, what is actually feasible, at what scale can we produce, for instance, renewable energy, at what scale can we produce hydrogen, what is available, and where do we need to increase capacity? I mean, renewables are great, and electrification for sure will be a big part of the solution. But if we need renewable energy for electricity in mobility, but also for hydrogen, etc., we really need to increase the capacity by maybe 10 times what we currently have. So I think that's a big challenge as well. And what is needed to make it happen, right? What do governments need to do? For instance, there's a lot of talk about hydrogen, but where will this come from? If we only talk about clean hydrogen from renewable energy, do we first need gray or blue hydrogen from gas or from fossil fuels in order to scale the infrastructure and have the projects? So I think there's a significant policy push needed for these new technologies and innovations, which are there. I mean, there is a lot of progress in what can be done in battery technology and battery storage, but we need to create the market to make this happen. And then I think lastly, indeed, sort of another challenge is the EU's focus on strategic autonomy. So the EU wants to be more, self-dependent, I would say, and be less dependent on others, but still having this global approach, as you say, because we need to cooperate to find any solution. The EU does not have all the energy sources that it may need. It does not have access to the raw materials, and that's where it really needs partners who care as much about sustainability as the EU does. And I think this confirms the partnership with Canada, for instance, to really look how can we do this together, because indeed, it cannot be done alone. We've also seen now with COVID that there's sort of, especially Southeast Asia or something, that there's really investment still in coal and coal infrastructure. But okay, it needs to come from somewhere. So we need to have this global approach, and I think it will need to be led by those who have most capacity to do so, like the EU, like Canada. That's just my take on the right approach.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Now turning to you, Nicolas. So you've heard what Barbara mentioned, and the need to take into account the social impact as well as the competitiveness of industry, the need to capacity. Thanks. there was a bit of an echo, and apologies needed. And I'm wondering, from your point of view as Boralex, maybe you can explain a little bit, what you do and how that debate relates to your priorities. How do you feel as a company you can capitalize on a recovery plan and take part, particularly with respect to Green Deal objectives, opportunities for funding and the economic recovery plans? How, what kind of space there is for you to contribute and collaborate in the EU? I think you're on mute.
Apologize, and the classical problem. So, good morning, Eline. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks, Sam, for organizing this event. Effectively, Boralex is a green energy producer, a Canadian-based company founded 30 years ago, and justly we are celebrating this week our 30th anniversary. We've penetrated the French market just 20 years ago, and we are now producing green energy through wind plants and solar plants. And we are fully integrated company, meaning that we develop projects, we operate the project, and we resell the energy. So effectively, the Green Deal is for us extremely important because this is leading the path for forthcoming new opportunities. And being based in France, it is clear that France is being influenced by the EU decisions. So it is extremely important for the EU to basically give us the main direction for us to adapt. Now, what I can see today is that apart from addressing environmental challenges, I think the Green Deal is also a fantastic economic recovery tool. A recent study from UI and WWF demonstrated that for each euro invested in the energetic transition, the return was 2.8 euro in 2022. In just 2 years, more than the double in terms of return. So it's extremely important. It's quite significant, and I think this Green Deal will certainly generate massive investments from the states, but not only from the states, also from companies moving towards CSR projects. Therefore, we are very confident about the future, meaning that if we look at the main targets in the EU and in particular in France, we can clearly see that we'll have basically to increase drastically the capacities in terms of solar plants, wind plants. So this is giving us a lot of opportunities for sure. What is also a challenge today is that apart from defining a target, which is today well defined and quite satisfactory, I think it is important to make sure that we can reach that target. And today the main problem in Europe is the fact that if you look at the regulations, and in particular in France, the main target is okay, but the regulations in place are not, let's say, relevant to address the target, to reach the target. So for us at the EU level, and in particular in France, today our goal is to adjust and to make it current, meaning that we have not only to define the target, but we have to define basically year after year the path to reach the target. And this is really important because if not, we'll be reaching 2030 or 2029 and suddenly discovering then the target cannot be reached. And then all the member states will say, oh, I'm sorry, we've missed the target. So let's again, organize a new target by 2050 and start the whole thing again. And this would be a disaster because, as mentioned by Barbara, we have no other chances. There is no plan B. We need to succeed. We need to make sure that during the 10 coming years, we really change the setup of the energy in Europe. This is really, really important.
Thank you very much. I do have a follow-up question, actually. So, you mentioned how it's a difficult environment to navigate. I take it, the way I received what you shared was that there is in Europe a lot of fragmentation when it comes to, having truly common strategies and, as you mentioned, a clear path towards reaching the objectives. So why is Europe, to a company like Boralex, why is Europe, like France and maybe other European countries, why are they still attractive markets for energy providers and power producers?
Well, because despite those difficulties, the market is there. And today we have more than 1 gigawatt in operation in France, 2 gigawatts worldwide. So meaning that France represents 50% of the Boralex business. So it's a strategic target for us. And based on our past experience, although it is difficult, year after year, quarter after quarter, we are developing the company. So basically, it is our job to find solutions to address those regulations and make sure that we can then deploy the company. Just let me give you a few figures based on what is called the annual energy programmation, the PPE. It's a law defining our targets, and this law is defining the targets in the solar business and in the wind business. And in this law, it states that we have to increase by 4 the quantity of solar plants and by 2.5 the quantities of wind plants over the 8 coming years. So this is giving us a lot of opportunities. And of course, we all know that day after day it is difficult to get authorization. But nevertheless, at the end of the day, we are still developing the company, and France is still a very important target to us.
Okay, thank you very much. I would want to ask you about this, but maybe let's get back to that later. I'll first ask you, Barbara. You mentioned strategic autonomy of the EU, and this wasn't necessarily meant to be part of the conversation, but I find it very interesting because I have the feeling this is making some stakeholders quite nervous, as you know, when it comes to staying, as you mentioned, managing to be autonomous at the same time staying open as a market. Can you tell us a little bit more about how industry is feeling when it comes to this policy narrative and how it can impact them?
I mean, the whole strategic autonomy is coming from the trade perspective, of course, and was very much driven also by the COVID and by the, well, I would say almost the joke with the facial masks, etc., and how long it took for things to arrive in Europe. So I think it's coming from there, and really for Europe to look, I mean, partly from there to look at, okay, what do we need to be less dependent, also in a world where we see that sort of big partners are looking more inward rather than outward. How can we not be the naive player? On the same time, Europe is very much aware that it's an open market and that it needs to be open and that it needs crucial partners. So I think how is industry feeling about it? I think they realize this is a reality, and I think industry is probably thinking in similar ways. It's just a question of who can be there for Europe, right? Who can be really sort of that stable partner who is sustainable? Because I think part of it is also in the strategic autonomy, the partners that Europe wants to work with, it's very much this sustainability focus. I mean, that's maybe not a full answer to the question, but I think sort of the partners that Europe wants to work with, we need to make sure that everything can be tracked and that it's sort of whatever you do in those supply chains, that you're the right type of partner, the reliable one, the one where that takes social, environmental impact really into account. And you see that also through the ongoing work on a mandatory framework for due diligence, for sustainable corporate governance. So I think what industry needs to do in order to be a full part of that story is to make sure that you have that right story and that you can show that you are a reliable, dependent partner where we're helping Europe to be autonomous. Well, I mean, not to be autonomous, but how do I want to say this? We're helping Europe to help them in their goals and to be where they want to be, while taking that global approach still, if that makes sense somehow.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And I think I didn't ask you to comment yet on, there was a question I asked Nicolas about, the kind of business opportunities that, the European market represents. Did you want to comment on that perhaps?
Yeah, well, I think it's linked to this. It's really sort of sustainability is key in the whole EU narrative at the moment, right? So it's very much in everything that they do. I mean, from the Green Deal, but also going, because it's not just, I mean, people sometimes think that the Green Deal is only about environment, but you see it's very broad, right? It's this whole growth strategy. It's about digital transformation. It has an impact on all aspects and all sectors. So I think in terms of business opportunities, and it's a bit what Nicolas mentioned already, I mean, those who will remain relevant and those who show resilience are those who actually master this green transition and who are there to accelerate the green transition. And I think that's key. You know, it was already part of the Green Deal. It's emphasizing the green recovery. You can see it's about renovation, it's about hydrogen, it's about mobility, but it's also about the hard to abate sectors. It's about heating. I mean, it's really things that also come close to the people. So I think the sustainability angle is key. Then also under the recovery, I mean, the EU is working on this recovery fund or the next generation EU package where the EU will take loans and grants to companies or regions. But at a certain point, there will be, I mean, the EU will need to repay its own debts. And this will probably be through taxes. So that can be through a carbon tax, can also be through a digital tax or a financial transaction tax. But there again, those who are sustainable, you know, have again that extra benefit. Also, you see on the financing coming from the private markets, sustainable finance package, the taxonomy for which are sustainable investments. Again, you know, the sustainability really is key, I think, for anybody who wants to invest or wants to grow and wants to be active on the market here.
Thank you. And do you feel, because I think it's almost 40% of the next generation EU program, so that's the recovery instrument, will be spent on Green Deal objectives, and some mention that, you know, there should be more funding if you know, Green Deal is such an important objective. Do you agree that it's, I mean, from an industry and policy perspective, could you just tell us what you think? Is it sufficient in your view?
I mean, that's always the question, right? If you look also at the Just Transition Fund, I mean, if you look at sort of the numbers that are being named, either 7.5 billion to 30 billion, the recovery package will be 750 billion. I mean, it always depends on what money would otherwise already be there by governments or something. So what is really the added value? I think, yeah, does 30% of the recovery package need to go to climate investments? Obviously. I mean, I think it's probably going to be even more, in my view, because I think many of these investments are linked, maybe indirectly, but are linked to this wider story. And I think that's where we need to step away from this environmental narrative versus the economic narrative. I mean, if we really want to have that growth of the market, in the end, everything will need to be linked to the green growth. That's my view.
Thanks, Nicolas. I see you wanted to come in with a comment.
Sorry, I concur to Barbara's comments. What is extremely important is to understand that despite the Green Deal and despite the massive investments which are now forecasted, it is difficult for the EU economy to readapt. And it's all about an evolution process. I mean, you look at the big utilities, oil and gas company, they're all moving towards renewables, but this will require a lot of changes. And it is clear that the big utilities having moved towards renewables before the others are, you know, getting better results. I mean, this is very, very clear. So it's all about change management for a start. And the second point I would like to underline is the fact that the renewable is today an industry which is competitive, which wasn't the case 10 years ago. So if you look at the solar plants, the wind plants, the energy produced by those plants is extremely competitive. And that's the reason why it is, of course, an environmental target. It's also an economical solution. You look at the price level of Europe is extremely low. I mean, for example, wind has been decreased the prices by 30% over the past 3 years, 30%. In the solar industry, we've decreased the prices by 10 times in just 10 years. So it's a massive decrease. And therefore, today, the prices are very, very competitive versus fossil energies or even the nuclear industry in France. The second part is related to the EU structure. We need to cooperate, meaning that the new world will be based on an EU energy network, which isn't today really in place. And I think it is important to work on the smart grids, the way we will interconnect European countries, making sure that we can basically take advantage of the different production units all over Europe. And the third thing is related to the carbon tax. You've mentioned, Barbara. I think it is important for the EU to work on the carbon tax. It is the last component we need to make sure that the whole structure is in place. Last point maybe is storage. Storage today is just at the beginning. We are the premises of this new industry. Undoubtedly, storage is one component needed to achieve the green EU structure. And I think we need to invest on the storage components, making sure that we decrease the cost of this component.
Thanks for your reaction. So you can mute yourself again. It's a bit of an exercise. So yeah, you mentioned quite a few things. I think we'll get back to the carbon tax because obviously this is one of the ways, one of the key challenges in this discussion. But Barbara mentioned earlier hydrogen. So the Green Deal includes investing in those lighthouse European projects with hydrogen renovation and 1 million electric charging points, and they want to create this European hydrogen valley and a new green bond standard to ensure that you have 30% of the new generation EU tool raised through green bonds. So I'm wondering, what are your views on hydrogen? Using it as a renewable and sustainable solution for reducing fossil fuel consumption used to be a fanciful idea, but the conversation has gotten serious, and it seems we're maybe at a crossroad. We've all heard of Airbus unveiling concepts for hydrogen power planes. So, but in your view, to what extent is hydrogen a promising and realistic solution, or is it maybe an illusion? Can it be interesting in the short, medium, or long term? For what kind of, what types of application, and what is the feasibility? Perhaps Nicolas, if you wanted to come in on this first, or Barbara. I think we've lost Nicolas.
No, I'm there. Barbara, or?
You can go ahead.
Okay. So I'll go ahead. So hydrogen is certainly an interesting option. Today, it's not competitive. And I think that's the reason why the EU and all the member states are actively supporting this option to make sure that working on increasing the size of the project would be able to decrease the cost of the energy produced. Today, it's far too expensive, and I think this is what is slowing down the deployment of hydrogen. But we can assume
Nicolas?
that. Yes.
I think we're having a connection problem with you. It's not very clear, so maybe try to check whether your connection is good, and I can ask the question.
Okay, can you hear me well?
No, it's cutting, but okay. Maybe.
Let me try with my section. Give me 1 second.
Thank you. We're just having a few connection problems. Let's see.
Now it's better now?
Yes, it seems better. So I'm sorry I interrupted you. You can.
No. It's my apologize. My apologize for this technical hiccup. So regarding hydrogen, I think hydrogen is certainly a promising option. As I was saying today, I think hydrogen is too expensive, and therefore the goal would be to decrease the cost of the produced energy in expanding basically this industry. So in a way, the investments mentioned in the different plans, including the French Plan de Relance, are extremely important, because this will certainly help us to decrease the cost of hydrogen. For me, this is key. The other topic I would like to mention, the fact that today we are talking about two types of hydrogen, the green hydrogen and the gray hydrogen. And Boralex is supporting the green hydrogen, not the other one. The risk being to use hydrogen as a pretext, as a tool to maintain the fossil fuel and the nuclear plants we're trying to get rid of. And I think we need to be very, very cautious about this particular aspect.
Thank you very much. Barbara, did you want to come in on this as well?
Yes, unfortunately, I didn't hear Nicolas very well, so I'm very sorry if I'm going to repeat some of the things, but the audio kept on breaking up for me.
That's fine.
Yeah, but yeah, hydrogen, you asked, is it an illusion or is it real? I mean, it's absolutely real, I believe, and it's a solution that we will need because, of course, you have, as we already said, electrification and especially renewable energy is key. However, it can only do so much. We cannot decarbonize the full economy based on renewable energy, let's say, or electricity. So we need to have, especially in the hard-to-abate sector, so that means energy-intensive, heavy industry, power generation, heavy transport. We need other solutions. And hydrogen there can be a solution. However, in order to really scale that up, we need a significant policy push. And then you have the different types of hydrogen. So depending where your hydrogen is being produced from, so it can come from fossil fuels, can come from natural gas, for instance, together potentially with carbon capture and storage, which makes it a cleaner solution than just natural gas. It can come from nuclear, it can come from renewable energy. So I think this hydrogen valley, this hydrogen ecosystem that the EU needs to create needs to be, well, at least in first instance, tech neutral, to make sure that eventually the clean solutions, which are today still very expensive and not yet cost competitive, so that means from renewable energy through electrolysis, create that hydrogen. We need to create that market, right? So that the prices go down and that they actually can be solutions for these energy intensive industries, for instance. So in that regard, yes, we need it. Is this going to happen in the next 5 years? No. I mean, we need to have sort of a plan for the next 10 years and then going further towards 2050.
Thank you. Nicolas, I wanted to probe you on that. Did you want to comment? Because I just wanted to circle back to the French market, because on that it's really engaged in developing green, clean hydrogen made in France. So they want to invest billions by 2030, leaning on the French nuclear power to reduce and avoid imports from other countries. And at the same time, you have a country like Germany that wants to import low carbon hydrogen because it doesn't have enough domestic renewable energy like wind and production like wind and solar to meet a target. So any views on that sort of not schizophrenia, but discrepancy in the different investment policies or objectives?
Yeah, I've missed Barbara's comments because the sound was off. So sorry about that. So I may repeat some ideas, but the fact is, if you look at the recovery plan we have in France, basically 30 billion euros are dedicated to the energy transition. And amongst those 30 million euros, so roughly, as I said, 30% of the whole amount, a large part is to develop hydrogen. I think the French government is seeing hydrogen as a recovery tool to basically to boost the economy. And so this is the economical part. And also, as I said, a way to maintain the energetic structure as it is, right? So we support, as I said, the green hydrogen, and it is important to make sure that we're not using those investments just as a tool to maintain a status quo, I would say. So we'll be extremely careful about that. But nevertheless, it is a good solution combined to storage. I don't think hydrogen can address any type of usage, for sure. And I would see a combination between storage and hydrogen. Hydrogen being used for mass transportation, You've mentioned, I think, the planes, etc. But I still believe that the storage solution will offer some interesting applications for smaller type of EV, for example.
Thank you. It's really a pity that we don't have Philippe Couillard with us, because it would be nice to have the perspective of Canada and Quebec from a policy and industry perspective, especially because the energy mix it's a challenge there too. There's oil production and nuclear energy still represent a big part of their overall energy production. So there are these various economic equality realities to factor in. So, for instance, we have hydroelectricity that accounts for a huge part of the electricity used in Canada and Quebec. So I wanted to ask you maybe more broadly, do you think the 2020, 2030 and 2050 goals to diversify sources of energy, are they realistic for all? And how do you see, because, I know most of us today are from a European perspective, but how can the EU and Quebec mix their expertise and share practices and build maybe common strategies to achieve those goals together? Anyone wants to come in on that? You being polite or shy?
Okay, so I'll comment. I think the goals are realistic. It's feasible. Now, as I said beforehand, the main thing is now to make sure that those goals are achievable. And it's all about tuning the regulations, creating a green taxonomy, thinking about this carbon tax to make sure that the components needed to deploy the green industry are fully implemented. If you look at the different EU member states, in many cases, the goals set up by those member states are quite okay, but then they stop the work. And if you look at the way you can deploy those targets, is basically impossible. So I think the role of the EU will be to make sure that on a yearly basis, we do control the capabilities in each market to deploy this green recovery. This is really important, because not only this is addressing, as I said, the environmental challenges, but it's also a way to create jobs. And the potential of job creation is massive. But of course, you understand that those job creations are related to the new capacities being installed. If we cannot install new capacities, well, we just cannot create jobs. So it's very simple. So looking at the regulations and making sure the regulations are in place, this is, I think, key. Regarding the Canada help or the Canada support, or the way Canada could basically support the EU in that mission, I think Canada is in certain ways well advanced in terms of renewable energy. I think you look at the hydro power in Canada, it's massive. And what is really interesting about Canada is the fact that now Canada is looking at connecting the country to other states, like the New York State, for example. I think there's a lot of discussions about interconnections between Quebec and the New York State. And I think if we look at Europe, as I said, one of the key solutions is also to make sure that the smart grid is fully implemented, making sure that the interconnections are working well. The European energy concept doesn't exist for the moment. I think you look at every member state, each time the member state is looking at its own challenges without having in mind a global solution. And I think part of the solution is to make sure that we think globally at the EU level and not only at the member state level.
Thanks very much. Barbara, did you want to comment before we move to the carbon tax discussion?
Yeah, so maybe commenting, and I agree with what Nicolas has said already. I think it's sort of indeed these partnerships to set them up in all kinds of ways, which is coming from through R&D, already think together, where are we going to invest, what kind of funding is going to which companies, sort of putting these strategic priorities together. I think there certainly are a lot of benefits to work together. Then it's also about exchanging best practices, exchanging new technologies as well. And maybe an example of a Canadian company, actually from Quebec, that we work with at Hanover, is Spirowave. They have created this new technology for chemical recycling. So, I mean, apart from energy, we're also talking sort of wider environment, right? And so what they do is basically chemical recycling is a way to recycle plastic and to make new plastic from that. I mean, you can also make new oil, etc. But theirs is a plastic-to-plastic recycling technology. Now, they've done all of this research in Quebec since the last 10 years. They now want to come to Europe, and they have a partnership with Michelin. And so they're also looking at sort of how can they, for instance, now get funding from the Innovation Fund. So the EU Innovation Fund, which is under the European Emission Trading Scheme. So because it's a program where the EU wants to invest in energy efficiency and climate-friendly technologies, etc. So I think there as well, it's a great example of how these partnerships can work, on how you can bring together this sort of research money and make sure that the technologies that are developed on either side can also really benefit and grow in the other market. So this is just one example, but I'm sure there's many more, and this works on sort of, all environmental issues or any other issue for that matter.
That's a very interesting example. And actually, I'd like to know, it just comes to my mind, to what extent do you believe government intervention or regulations or government push is needed? Isn't the private sector already setting up partnerships like those, themselves?
I think it needs to go both ways. I mean, obviously, sort of, you have already a lot of indeed private initiatives. You have the public-private partnerships, but then I think government funding and R&D is crucial. I mean, especially with the things we've been talking about today. If we want to accelerate a lot of these new technologies and innovations, if we want to reach those targets, you need to push the market further than what it would do normally. Because, I mean, even if let's say hydrogen or a lot of sort of power generation, or even if you take the whole nuclear debate, I mean, there are a lot of clean solutions, but today we have infrastructure which you don't automatically. I mean, it's not that you say, okay, we have a new idea, so you delete everything else. I mean, you have existing infrastructure which may be still more polluting, and as Nicolas already referred to, these things take time. The market needs to adapt, and that is just a very costly process. And so I think there the market cannot just do it alone. It's I think government intervention is a key element. So, but maybe Nicolas has different views on that. I don't know.
Maybe Nicolas, would you like to react?
Well, Eline, I'm really sorry, but I cannot hear Barbara. There is no sound, no video, nothing. I've lost the connection with Barbara. So
that's a shame. She was basically wondering, she was just explaining how she feels that industry best practices are there, but that government involvement is still essential when it comes to funding, especially.
Yes, indeed. What I could mention is I could talk about the corporate PPAs. Today, we have the possibility in signing agreements directly with industries. And just as an example, Boralex has signed with Orange recently, or with Auchan retail in the retail industry. So we've secured some deals with those two companies in selling green energy during the 5 coming years without the state involvement. So it is for sure a new commercialization solution. We believe that this corporate PPA concept will develop itself and will be certainly an important component of Boralex in the future. But for the moment, the vast majority of our deals are being related to basically what is called contract for difference or wind tariff defined over 20 years, right? So we need to escape from those long-term support mechanisms to move towards the free market. And I've mentioned before that the competitiveness of the renewable is there. So this will help us to achieve this goal and to make sure that at the end of the day, we are not dependent upon state support schemes, right? Moving
Sorry,
from,
could you repeat that? I didn't.
In the coming years, we will be free from the support schemes, and we'll be able to move towards the marketplace through direct agreements with companies, for example, or even regions or communities. So I think this is a very important move. It's ongoing. It will take a few years, but I think this will also speed up the deployment of the renewable. Now, having said that, this will require some time, and during that period, we need to make sure that the states are supporting the evolution, because, as I said, if we cannot implement a wind farm, I cannot sell green energy, and the wind farm, the authorization of the wind farm is related to regulation. So we need to make sure that the regulations are in place, producing the needed capacities or needed volumes to achieve our goals.
Thanks very much.
So we still need the member states.
Yeah, I think that was a very interesting nuanced point of view you gave on that. To speed up deployment of renewables. In the end, in the long term, it would be better to move from support mechanisms to free trade market. But for now, you need infrastructure, you need state support. That's essential.
Yes.
Thank you. I think at the beginning of our conversation, Barbara referred to the social impact of all that, the need to create jobs. We're in a recession. And you also referred to some ways for the EU, but also others to get additional revenue. There's some certain hard choices, like carbon taxes, that may seem inherent to achieving climate strategies and targets, but they can affect societies, and they're a challenge for decision makers. So I'm wondering if you could share any view you have, either from industrial point of view or policy point of view. How can we strike the right balance so that we can reach this essential objective, which is reducing carbon emissions, but with just and fair policies? And to what extent do you think consumers are also ready for this transition? Who would like to start? Maybe Barbara, as you brought it up.
Yeah, thanks. So I think a big question is indeed, as we said before, who's paying the costs, right? Who's bearing the cost of this transition? And I think one of the big problems, let's maybe start from the consumers, is that I think a lot of consumers today are sort of tired or uncertain what they need to do, and it's a lot of it's as if the choices are being put either I make my individual choices, or the corporates need to do their thing, or governments need to make sure that, for instance, when I go to a store, whatever I buy needs to be already the right product, right? So if I have 10 choices to buy a product, 9 out of 10 should be already carbon friendly or environmental friendly. So you have, and it's being put against one another, where I think, in the end, it's this overall story. I think what is important is indeed that corporates or the big industries that still do emit quite a bit. We have to be realistic in this. Just power generation or the manufacturing of steel, cement. This is just massive CO2 emissions, but we all need it. So it's too easy to say, okay, guys, we'll just overload you with the burden of taxes, because this will trickle down in the prices that we all pay when we, for instance, buy a house or a car or anything else. So I think it's important to make sure and make it clear that everybody contributes. A carbon tax, I think a lot of people are understanding that we need it, but again, there it needs to be proportionate with what you can actually pay. And we need to make sure that these prices that industry will have to pay through whatever tax will not automatically trickle down on the prices, because that is where that's where the Gilets jaunes come from. It's like, fine, if you put all these taxes, but if I still need a car to go to work because there's no public transport, and my gasoline price goes up, and then you come again to this the people who worry about the end of the month, right? Which is a reality. And I think we really need to take that into account. It's about heating in remote areas. It's about public transport. And that shows again that any solution for this, and that's also what the EU is trying to do with this Green Deal, of course, any solution needs to be this comprehensive strategy that addresses all elements of it. We can no longer work in silos, which I think we still do too much, but it's difficult to break that down. And you think of transport, and then you have energy policy, and you have climate policy, and you have circular economy, and you have this. But in the end, it all needs to work together to also address those social and economic concerns. So it's about governments investing in everything. It's about public transport. It's about city visions, right? City planning. There's so many elements that come together. It's about job creation, because if you create more jobs, then there will be less worrying about who pays the bills, etc. So, yeah, it's maybe a bit of a vague, fluffy explanation, but I think it is a crucial challenge of what we need to do and linked to all of those taxation debates.
Thank you very much. That was very useful. And now, perhaps Nicolas, would you like to react?
Eline, can I ask you to summarize Barbara's comment, because I cannot hear anything. So it's just to avoid repeating, the same.
Oh,
ideas.
I think you might certainly agree with each other's point of view. I think Barbara also gave a broader picture of, that we need the vision, an overall vision, and we need to make sure that the measures that we take to reach those objectives remain proportionate, so that everyone understands that it's not just about the bills being impacted, as it's not necessarily the case. And Barbara mentioned as well the Gilets jaunes in France. I know there's a similar debate about the carbon tax in Quebec. So
yes, I understand. I think overall, if we think about the CSR concept, the corporate and social responsibility concept, this is becoming basically more and more important. It is clear that viewed from the citizen, and I guess COVID-19 has been, increasing this concept. People now believe that we just cannot do things as we used to do. We have to change things. We have to adapt. We have to move towards a greener economy. But people are wondering today whether they will accept the price to pay, because first of all, you will have to change the way you act, and sometimes this is really difficult. And secondly, I'm not quite sure people are willing to pay the economical price of this new way of consuming, new green energy, etc. So first point is to make sure that whatever we develop, we make sure that the competitiveness of the solutions are there, so that viewed from the consumer perspective, the price will remain about the same. And I think this will ease the adoption of these new solutions. And secondly, I think we need to look also at the finance world. What could be seen today is the fact that a lot of CSR basically regulations are being adopted by those financial structures, and they are imposing basically green energy all over the place. So some investment funds in the Nordics, for example, are just imposing certain rules which are eliminating companies still based on fossil fuel structure. So I think this is the big change.
Thank you very much for addressing. Oh yes, thanks Nicolas for addressing this, and welcome Philippe. Thank you for joining us. We have only 7 minutes left, but I'd like to give you the word to give your vision of, from a policy and industry perspective. How do you see Canada's involvement with the Green Deal? Any thoughts you'd like to share if you heard us talking perhaps before?
Sure. I'm awfully sorry. We had the internet connection problems. I was there on time and it failed, but now we found a way in. So let's dive in. I was hoping to say that the current circumstances in the financial world make it actually more possible to do a true, genuine green transition because of the large amount of liquidity that has been injected in the financial system. There's a unique opportunity to move forward. Now, looking at the situation from Canada's perspective, the Canadian narrative on energy, I think, is a two-way story. In the western provinces, it's mainly about oil and gas, as we know, and on the eastern side of the country, with Quebec mainly and Manitoba, it's more about renewables and hydroelectricity. So it's a dual situation. You have to adapt what we would do in Canada according to where you are in the country. So looking at it from Quebec, which has 3% of the world's freshwater reserves and the fourth producer in the world of hydroelectricity, it's quite obvious that the electrification of transportation is going to be the main axis of the actions of the government and society and the business world in the coming years. It's already there. It started like everywhere. Right now, we have the opportunity to accelerate it and look at things like the lithium-ion battery value chain, where a country like Canada and Quebec in particular could very well find its place. So that would be a significant opportunity. Hydrogen as well. As you know, there are different kinds of hydrogen, and Quebec is blessed with hydroelectricity. So we actually produce green hydrogen, which could be tremendously useful for heavy transportation. For light transportation, I think lithium-ion batteries have won the contest, but there is still room in heavy transportation, railway, even maritime transportation for hydrogen. And on the western side of the country, does it mean that nothing can be done? Of course, on the contrary. Because the business still exists. There still these oil and gas installations where maybe we could accelerate the R&D in carbon capture and storage technology, which probably will have a lot of economic value in the future. There's a recent report by the International Energy Agency on this, and definitely room for carbon capture in the future. That's where Canada should also play a leading role with renewables, as I said earlier. So lots of opportunities, lots of true business opportunities for Canada, and many ways to contribute to that effort. And again, it's a unique opportunity for the world to accelerate that transition, and it should be taken.
Thank you. Could you tell us a little bit more about how Canada and Quebec companies and also maybe policymakers are looking at the Green Deal objectives and the recovery plan in the EU? How is it within their reach, all these goals? And specifically also our panelists talked about the opportunities to work together, to share expertise, to target R&D together. What sort of position on collaboration could be envisaged here?
But apart from the true direct business opportunities, such as I mentioned earlier, the lithium-ion battery value chain, there's definitely a joint effort that could be made in R&D, both on renewables, and Quebec has a very active R&D effort in this matter, has had it for years, and also, again, on the western side of the country, looking at technologies like carbon capture and storage, which is still not mature from the business point of view. But if we accelerate the development, it could become so, and could become an important solution around the world also, something that Canada could export as well as an expertise. So, there's a pure business aspect, which is promising, and also the R&D, as you said, the R&D effort where we could play a significant role.
It's great you mentioned that, because we had some reactions from attendants here, and I have to say this is maybe something I'd like to give you as maybe if you'd like to react. They're saying that R&D financing should actually be stopped so that innovation, at least for a couple of years or so that the innovation that's, the already the use cases that exist and the results of the R&D of the past years could be implemented. And they're saying we're spending a lot of money to new R&D, to opening too many drawers and leaving other drawers half empty, so without implementing what we discovered. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's the degree of truth in this, because a lot of R&D effort is already on the way, but I don't think we should have to choose between one and the other. You have people on your panel who work for companies that are dedicated to renewables, already building on these R&D efforts that have been going on for years and years. If you look at the world of the batteries, lithium-ion batteries, of course, the battery day from Tesla was a very significant event. And we have still ongoing efforts to increase the power, the performance, the range of these batteries, which is going to be the key for adoption. So I wouldn't say there's no room anymore for more R&D. There is, and this is where governments play a significant role. And going back at this lithium-ion battery story, what also we see is because of the huge quantity of batteries that are being produced and will be produced, these batteries are going to be some kind of a commodity. So private investors are not going to be looking very kindly at this. And this is where capital injection from governments is going to be crucial, because this will be a very capital intensive business for many, many years. So I don't see that we have to choose between stopping R&D and doing business. Actually, R&D should continuously feed the business efforts.
Thanks. And I hope it's all right if I ask your reaction on another part of the conversation that we had, which was about carbon tax. Yes. How do you feel about, this? There's also a requirement to take social impacts into consideration, but sure, we need to reach those objectives.
Definitely, you cannot have, in my view, you can have a very credible action on emissions control without some kind of carbon pricing. And the two golden standards there are either a carbon tax or a cap and trade system like we have going on with California, which is, by the way, very interesting to have a transnational effort and a common market of carbon credits still going on after many years and still working quite well, actually. So I see advantages on both. In Quebec, we did choose the carbon market option because it put more pressure on emitters to choose the right solution, contrary to the carbon tax, which is diffused and applied to everyone, consumers, etc. So that's not to say that the one is necessarily better than the other, but there are different circumstances. So carbon pricing has to stay there, has to also be linked. We have to link these carbon markets and these carbon taxes regimes, so there's more sense in it for businesses when they try to export and going in different markets. So that's also something that's going to need to be driven by international multilateral efforts.
Thanks very much. Just expanding the conversation for 1 or 2 minutes, as you joined a bit late, I wanted to ask you if there was any overall additional comment that you wanted to make from Canada's and Quebec's perspective.
Well, I think in my introduction, I mentioned Canada's advantages and Quebec's advantages in particular, but I think there are opportunities for all the country now. Even and it sounds paradoxical for some, but I don't see it as paradoxical. Even in the western part of the country, where oil companies will accelerate the shift to renewables, as we've seen with BP recently, for example. And again, this carbon capture storage effort that should be ongoing. And of course, in the East, because of the tremendous wealth of hydroelectricity that we have and the attached industry, that there is significant options there to be accelerated. I see this post-COVID world not necessarily creating new trends, but significantly accelerating the trends that were already there. And energy is one example. You have the same in healthcare and in the financial markets too.
Thank you. And finally, any reaction from you, Barbara and Nicolas? This was, from Philippe's input. Any thoughts?
Yeah, maybe just one point.
We concur to Philippe's input. Yeah. I think we are all in line. Let's make sure that we do not miss that opportunity. Time is of the essence. We don't have a lot of time. We need to make sure that those key changes are being implemented in a quicker manner. We have just a few years to make sure that the EU economy adapt to these new constraints. And I guess it is very important to make sure that we do not lose time. Let's make it happen.
Thank you. Good. I think, anyone else wants to?
Maybe just one quick reaction.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No.
Okay. So I'll go ahead. One quick reaction on on the question that was made also on the R&D and on the investment, and reacting to what Philippe said. I fully agree with that. It's not a or. I mean, it's indeed you sort of fund or support the entire ecosystem, right? So I think that's also something that the EU is doing, looking also specifically not only at the start of projects, but also the more mature technologies. And the Innovation Fund, for which a first call was just launched, and I think the deadline is in 2 weeks or something. This is really about supporting these climate innovations that are mature enough to go to market and to really help them leverage all the research that has been done and make sure that we can now have these benefits. So just wanted to comment on that as well. And I think overall, what has been said here today, sort of those who see the benefits in the transition, those who are able to accelerate, as Philippe also just said, those will be the ones that remain relevant and will show most resilience throughout this crisis, but also in the next decade, without a doubt.
Thank you, Barbara. Final word to you, Philippe. I saw you wanted to come in.
Well, no, I would just wanted again to apologize for my being late. I'm known for being always on time, so it's difficult for me to go through this. But sometimes technology plays games on us, and this is exactly what happened. At least I was able to join at the end. Hopefully, we'll do it again in a more technically sound way. I hope the next time. So my regards to everyone and to the audience. And there's a brand new. Green opportunity ahead of us. As we said earlier, time is of the essence. The window is not to be open very long, and we have to get in it as soon as possible.
Thank you so much, Philippe Couillard, and to you, Barbara and Nicolas. It was a true honor to have you, the three of you today. We managed to somehow exchange on a few topics on the Recovery Fund and the Green Deal that we hear our panelists agreed there was a unique opportunity to move forward, and it will generate investment. There are some economic and energy mix realities to take into account, the social impact as well. We talked about job creation, the carbon tax, the need to move at some point from state support to free market, but the funding is very much important for industry in order to just build infrastructure. And also before you came in, Philippe, we mentioned something about the importance to stay open as markets, even though the temptations are to lead in autonomy and sometimes in isolation. So this is really important to share expertise and better target and allocate R&Ds and seize opportunities. So thank you very much to you all. Let me remind the attendants that have joined us in the audience that there's a networking event taking place right now. You can go there on the left-hand side of the platform. And I will see you all again at 10:30 for the next panel on security and transport. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Nicolas. Thank you, Philippe. Thanks. And I wish you all an excellent day.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.